My name, hello, I'm Aniel Tamirano, teacher trainer and mentor. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Empowering Teachers Worldwide. Today, I'd like to talk about some strategies for developing speaking skills. Oral language skills are an essential part of a student's language and literacy development, no doubt. For some English language learners, speaking and listening may be much easier than reading and writing, but for others, the challenge of speaking in front of their peers, reading out loud, making a presentation in front of a class can be really daunting. We always see a number of students from every cultural background who are too shy to speak up in front of the classroom or to answer a question, even when they do have the answer. So, how can we support our learners' development and specifically their oral development in the classroom? Classroom activities that develop learners' ability to express themselves through speech would seem to be an important component of a language course, but it is difficult sometimes to design and administer those activities. So perhaps the first question that we need to ask ourselves is what reasons we have for asking our students to practice speaking in class. For many students, learning to speak competently in English is a priority, and they may need the skill for several reasons. And these reasons may vary considerably depending on the age of the student. So classroom activities that develop the learner's ability to express themselves through speech are extremely important. So we need to ask ourselves and reflect what use we make of these activities. So how much do our students speak in class? How do we prepare these speaking activities? What materials do we use? What particular problems our students have? Because this varies from classroom to classroom. And how do you encourage real communication in the lessons? Now, let's see some of the problems that we may have and some solutions. For example, typical students are shy, inhibition is a problem. They say that they have nothing to say. Sometimes you ask them, what do you think of? I agree. I don't like it. That's the most you get. There is lower uneven participation, lots of mother tongue use, and high levels of noise. So some of the solutions that I propose for these problems can be, for example, the use of group work, because this increases student talking time and lowers the inhibitions of learners who are unwilling to speak in front of a class. Also, base the activity on easy language. In general, the language required for a discussion should be lower than that used in intensive language learning activities in class. It should be easily recalled and produced so that learners can speak fluently with a minimum of effort and hesitation. Also, we need to make a careful choice of topic and task. The topic should obviously be suitable for the age group and familiar to the students. What's the point of asking the students about their experiences in traveling by plane if we know that none of them has stepped into a plane in their lives? Also, give some instructions or training in discussion skills. If the task is based on group discussion, include instruction in participation. For example, tell students to make sure everyone contributes to the discussion. Ask them to avoid monopolizing the discussion, respect turns of speech. You may appoint a chairperson to each group to regulate participation. We cannot expect our students to just tell them, okay, discuss, and then they know how to proceed. Also, keep them speaking in their target language. This sometimes is quite difficult, but you may appoint a monitor to each group whose function is to remind group members to use the target language. And give them some quiet time. They may need a period of quiet time, thinking time, before the speaking activity to make a note or two, organize their ideas, look up some vocabulary in a dictionary. That's it. To get ready for the activity. Mhm. So in order to achieve this, we need to change the paradigm from teacher-centered to learner-centered. Learner-centered learning puts more responsibility on the learners for their own learning. It involves them in more decision-making processes, and they learn by doing rather than just by listening and performing tasks, which are often not in context and unreal to them. And because learning becomes more active, it becomes more memorable. And because it is personalized and relevant to their own lives, it brings language alive, if you wish, and makes it relevant to the real world. So when planning more learner-centered lessons, it is useful to remember some things. Ask, don't tell. Always try to elicit information, ideas, answers from the learners. The more they contribute, the more they are likely to remember. Focus on their experiences and interests. Use the coursebook as a starting point, but then move on to practice activities that are related to their personal lives and areas of interest and experiences. This will help them become more involved and they will remember more. Also, prioritize communication over accuracy. The main reason for students learning a language, whatever the language is to be able to communicate with other speakers of that language. So students need opportunities to practice communicating in English without the constant fear of making mistakes hanging over them. If you feel the need to correct their mistakes, don't interrupt the conversations. Make notes and give feedback later, unless the mistake is so serious that it impedes communication. Also, the more actively involved students are in their learning, the more they are likely to remember what they learn. So learning by doing is the key. Also, students have choices and they can make decisions about learning. Group work, for example, requires negotiation and decision making. So working together towards a common goal will help them become more centered in their learning. Focus on confidence building. This is a real world skill. Yeah, so by developing communicative competence, language again becomes more real and part of their lives. Encourage interest in English, using the real world around them, using materials familiar to students, for example, the internet, video, television, magazines, if they read anything, maybe magazines, online magazines, so that students are constantly in touch with the language in an absorbing way. Also include tasks that are open-ended, that is, tasks that have more than one possible answer. They are wider in their focus and involve a variety of language skills, a variety of abilities, and a variety of interests. And also ensure there is high exposure to English through the use of authentic materials. Students may be set homework that involves doing research using the internet or other English language reference sources. Now, there are three things that we need to keep in mind. Know the interest of your students. More experienced teachers recognize that the more that you know about your students' backgrounds, the more appropriate and engaging your classes will become. So the point is that tailoring lessons specifically to the interest of your students can go quite far in encouraging their engagement. And this is essential to the development of critical thinking. Also, learn to really discuss the discussion questions. As a teacher, it is essential that we understand and communicate to ask students regularly the role of the questions they are being asked to answer. Virtually every language coursebook contains some form of discussion questions, and these are designed to give them some opportunity to practice the language. As a teacher trainer and observer, however, far too often I see these questions being used simply as a tool, or even worse, as a kind of hurdle one needs to get over before moving on to the next grammar point or to the reading passage. Encourage our students to really interact with the texts and the materials. In my experience, teachers often cite the frustration of having to retrain their students to really think about the questions they are discussing in class. We need to encourage our students to really interact with the texts and the materials that they are given, and we need to do this repeatedly. So, how can we do this? Okay, by means of some activities, many of which will be familiar to you, but let's give them a twist. For example, brainstorming. Successful brainstorming activities encourage all students to participate without focusing on correct or incorrect responses. The goal is to spark creativity to create lots of potential ideas rather than finding one correct solution. So, set ground rules about respecting everyone's contribution. Explain that the point of all the brainstorming activities is to come up with a lot of ideas, whether or not they will be used later. Announce the main topic or the theme so that the students can brainstorm about this. Write the main topic at the top of a large piece of paper or on the whiteboard. I prefer the piece of paper because I can then put it on one side, go on with the class, and if necessary, bring it back to the attention of the students. Ask the kids to think of as many ideas as possible that would fit under selected category. Write or ask them to write all the ideas on the list, even those that don't fit as well into the topic. One thing that you can do if you are teaching an online class is use Mentimeter, use a word cloud, use open-ended question type, and let the class share their thoughts and their ideas in a manageable way. All the answers can be saved in Mentimeter, which means nobody has to keep a written record, yes, because the app does it for you. So I really like Mentimeter for this. Also, another thing that you can do is personalization, group decision, problem solving. Personalizing activities allows students to communicate real information about themselves, which makes the learning more relevant to them. It also helps them to remember vocabulary and grammar more effectively and provides them with a chance to use English in meaningful communication. Decision-making is one of those life skills that helps people move through life with a purpose. Group decision-making is a conversational task based on reflective thinking and brainstorming. And this pattern of speaking activity is straightforward, presenting students with a range of decisions, each with several options to make a choice from, and it's an excellent exercise for improving the dynamics in a class. Analyzing a somewhat complex problems, for example, a city's public transport system, can give students a lot of opportunities to analyze an issue critically, and an issue that is related to their everyday life. So by asking them to look at the pros and cons, costs, benefits, you are forcing them to consider real world problems that impact their daily lives in a critical way. So in order to do this, first, we must identify a problem that is relevant to our students' lives and interests. Then the class should work together to clearly define the problem. This step is very important for the completion of the task. And you need to make sure that everyone is starting with a similar definition of the problem. Then you can divide the class into pairs, groups, teams, and ask them to list the root cases of the problem. Ask them to identify 2 or 3 causes that seem appropriate to the task, and they discuss the steps for their correction. Here, ask the students to keep in mind the real-world consequences to their actions. And this will prevent the solutions from becoming utopic or imaginary. And the students' ideas can be collected into an action plan, which can be posted around the class, or maybe as a real-world solution, sent to an appropriate authority, city authority for review. Another interesting activity that you can use is Think, Pair, Share. It is a collaborative learning strategy in which students work together to solve a problem or answer a question about an assigned reading. And it requires the students to think individually about a topic or answer to a question. It teaches students to share their ideas with classmates, discussing an answer with a partner, thus maximizing participation. They have to focus attention and engage in comprehending the reading material. It helps them focus attention and promotes classroom participation by encouraging a high degree of response rather than using a basic recitation method in which you pose a question and one student offers a response. This strategy also provides an opportunity for all the students to share their thinking with at least one student, who in turn increases the sense of involvement in classroom learning. And it can also be used as an information assessment tool. As students discuss their ideas, you can circulate and listen to their conversations, taking notes maybe, and responding accordingly if necessary. So, how do you do this? First of all, you decide upon the text to be read or the question to be discussed. If it is a reading, you can develop a set of questions or prompts that target key content concepts. Then you describe the purpose of the strategy and provide guidelines for discussions. Importantly, model the procedure so that students understand how to use this strategy, and monitor and support as they work through the activity. So you may begin by asking a specific question, right, about the text or whatever. So students think about what they know or they have learned about the topic, usually 1 to 3 minutes. Then they pair up with a partner or in a small group. Here you may choose whether to assign pairs or let them pick their own partner. Remember to be sensitive to their needs, reading skills, attention skills, language skills when creating these pairs. They share their thinking with their partner, discuss ideas, ask questions, 2 to 5 minutes. Once they have had time to share their thoughts and have a discussion, you expand the share into a larger group or a whole class discussion. So each group will choose a person who will present their thoughts, ideas, and questions to the rest, to the larger group or to the rest of the class. And using a student-to-student procedure, model this to ensure that they understand how to use it, and allow time for students to ask questions that clarify the use of the technique. Once they have a clear understanding surrounding the strategy, monitor and support them as they work through the steps. Yes. Another useful strategy is to use images. Visual thinking strategies is an inquiry-based teaching method which was created in the United States by cognitive psychologist Abigail House, and museum educator Philip Yenawine. Yenawine defines visual thinking strategies as the use of art to teach visual literacy, thinking, and communication skills. Now, you don't necessarily have to use works of art. You can use images of any sort. Here, for example, I'm showing you this image that I found on the internet years ago, and I love it because here we have Vincent van Gogh, the Lady of the Pearl, and Frida Kahlo in a bar at night. Here you have Starry Night. So what you do with this is you project an image and you ask the students to look quietly for a moment, say a minute. You ask several specific but open-ended questions that come in a sequence. There are 3 questions. The questions are, what's going on in the picture? What do you see that makes you say that? And what more can we find? Once the students have reflected individually on the 3 questions, they discuss their responses as groups or as a class. If you have a large class, better as groups and then as a class. The role of the teacher here is just to be a facilitator. You don't add comments, you don't correct, you don't direct students' attention. The whole process takes not more than 15 minutes. What happens here is that students notice different things and they contribute diverse observations, opinions, information. There is no attempt at reaching consensus. All the interpretations are valid. And as I said, you can use works of art, photographs, any kind of visual image. And you can use this also at any level because the response of the students will be at their own level. You can also use the picture pack. A picture pack is a collection of pictures from different sources. You can display them on a screen using Zoom, Jamboard, or simply on your table. And you ask the students to choose 1 or 2. And you give them time, let's say 5 minutes, to think and prepare to speak about the picture. And you can provide a number of sentence prompts to help them. And you encourage them to speak their mind, let's say. Again, it's important, the choice of pictures. Pictures that tell stories are wonderful. For example, in this case, here we have pictures from contemporary artists, Edward Hopper, for example. Each picture tells a story. They are wonderful for this. Or just photographs from magazines. And then a variation of this could be pairing up students or making groups of 3 so that students put their pictures together and try to find a connection between them. For example, these 3 pictures, they can look for some more pictures that will help them develop their point, and they may tell the story to the class. And the class can add details or find more connections with the pictures that they have in turn. Okay, so these are just a few ideas, and I'm sure that you have much more to offer to your students, but bear in mind to have time in class for developing speaking and not necessarily focusing on accuracy, but on developing fluency. These activities may be more suitable for older learners. The principles apply for older learners and for younger learners. In another video, I will give you some ideas that you can use with children. So this is it for the time being. Thank you very much and see you soon.